Good evening. Tonight I want to talk about a confession. Now, people can confess a lot of things, but I've been doing a lot of artwork lately on a personal nature, and it exposes aspects of my life that no one ever knows, no one knows about, and no one's ever talked about, and I've never talked about to anyone. I guess first and foremost, you could say that I've been a drunk, a drug addict, an epileptic, mystic, someone with a very complicated background. Now, some of it you know about the coma, you know about the change in personality. I didn't start out to become an alcoholic, or even I didn't even know what that was. I was a church member for many years, and a teetotaler. I didn't drink anything, didn't take any drugs of any kind, and I had my visions and I had hallucinations and all the rest, but none of it was connected to any kind of medication or stimulant. However, as I got older and after I got out of the military, I started to drink habitually. Every day I would go to the bar and drink all day. In fact, I just did an artwork about a woman that I used to drink with who was Vietnamese, and I didn't know she was Vietnamese at first and found out later that she was. And I was so moved by her story, but it didn't stop me from drinking. I kept right on drinking. I'd go home and stagger home because I just walked from, it was only a few blocks, and I'd go home and play the piano, and I was so depressed and I felt alone and lost and confused. Nothing that I ever believed in was concrete or supportive. I couldn't work it out. And I'd never drank, so I didn't know about alcohol. I didn't know its effects. I didn't know it was addictive. But I drank. I drank for about 2 years after I got out of the military. And then also, I had been on medication for quite some time, prescription, but inflated to a huge amount every day, since the effect of the meds were cumulative and I needed more and more and more. I always found a way to get them and to take them. So I was stoned most of the time. Interestingly enough, my spirit guide, Charon, never judged me ever about binges and overdoses, or almost all overdoses of medication or anything else. He never judged me about anything. When I'd come to him repentant and guilty about what I'd done and the kinds of things that I had pursued, he would say, "It doesn't matter. We have things to do today." and we would get on with whatever those things were. Time would go by, I would be sober, then I'd have a crisis, another marriage lost, something like that, and I would go back to the bars and drink. I did a couple of art pieces recently about that too, and I don't think people ever knew that I did that, because I was sort of the model of sobriety most of the time. They didn't know I was on a chronic drug that was supposed to help my nerves, but it also kept me pretty stoned. And without it, I don't think I could have functioned. Even going to the mountain, walking the hills, I was still on the meds. Now they were important, but they got less important as time went on. And I would stop taking them. And my visionary material would increase by tenfold as soon as I stopped taking the drugs. I think that they were blockers in a way. They were keeping me from myself. So for almost 10 years, I didn't take any drugs or drink any alcohol. And how strange it was to be that sober. But my job as a vice president of communications was really not suited to my temperament. So at lunch, I would have a margarita here and there, or maybe a shot, something, just to compensate for the stress of being in that profession, which is a highly stressful job. Telecommunications is about the highest stress job there is, because it's never good news. It's always bad news. People don't call you to tell you how great everything is. They call you because they got a problem and they want it solved, and they want it solved right now. Anyway, so from time to time, depending on how I was doing with my visions and with my seizures, I would go back to the bottle. People use alcohol to self-medicate that have epilepsy, and I was certainly using it for self-medication. I remember one of my wives, I don't want to use their name, so I have to call them my wife. She was a big drinker and a big partier, and she came to me one night and she said, "You know, you're actually drinking more than I do." And I was kind of shocked by that, because I didn't realize I was drinking that much. And then I looked back and I thought, I've been drinking a long time. Back to the 70s I was drinking. Now it was in the late 80s. And I never even thought about it. Just I would take a drink every night in my coffee. I called it my little Irish coffee, but it was mostly Irish and very little coffee. And yet I was still on a spiritual path, going to the mountain, going to places of magic and wonder, and then sort of falling off the wagon. After all, I'm only a human being. And I remember reading that Alan Watts died of alcoholism. Now, you may not know who Alan Watts is, but he was a writer, and he wrote spiritual books about spiritual aspects of the psyche, and he was brilliant at it, but he couldn't control his alcoholism, and it took his life. At least that's my understanding. If that's wrong, then somebody can correct me. But I just wanted to let you know that if you drink and take drugs, that doesn't mean you're not a spiritual person, and it doesn't mean that you can't follow your star wherever that star takes you. Now, it's going to affect your health, it's going to affect your relationships, it's going to affect every part of you. But the spirit inside of you doesn't judge you about it. It doesn't care because it knows that you're imperfect to start with. Perfection is on the other side of enlightenment. This side of enlightenment is whatever happens. So I wanted to make this quick, definitive statement tonight that yes, I'm an alcoholic. Yes, I'm a drug addict. But I function, and I'm a functional one, and there are times when I don't drink, and there's times when I don't take drugs. I'm taking drugs now because they're medications for my seizures, but they work the same, and they're a controlled substance just like any other controlled substance. But I don't drink because I'm older now, and it makes me kind of sick to take the drugs and drink, so I stopped drinking. But believe me, I would take a drink if I if I had an opportunity. So don't beat yourself up if you're in a place where you have to do that to maintain yourself or to be and to stay alive and to handle the stress that you're under, because your energy, your spirit doesn't care. I mean, it's no more a problem than any other spiritual problem would be with your soul. And you have just as much opportunity going to a bar and drinking as you do going to the mountain. After all, going to the mountain is a state of mind and a state of spirit. Now, even though I don't drink and I'm on medication, I couldn't be more spiritual than I am now if I tried. And what I'm trying to do is come clean about my life and about my experiences. So you don't think that I'm above it all or haven't been down there in the muck, because I certainly have been in the muck, or the negredo, as alchemists say. But there is always a way out, because your spirit guides don't care. I can't say that enough. It isn't that they forgive you, it's that they don't even care. I know there's a part of the Bible that says that when God forgives your sins, he forgets. He makes himself forget. He's omnipotent, but he makes himself forget that you ever sinned in the first place. So I have to end this now, but we'll be taking it up in the future. And I hope that you will listen to what I had to say, and I hope that it can be incorporated into your lifestyle and who you are. So blessings to you, and good night.